Jesse Myerson will be speaking. We'll really be answering the question, whose violence counts as violence in the headlines about Israel-Palestine and police shootings, and whose doesn't? Jesse is a communications director for If Not Now and former communications director for our friend India Walton and her mayoral campaign. Jesse, take it away.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Good to be here with everyone. I direct communications for If Not Now. For those who don't know us, we're an organization of U.S. Jews trying to organize other U.S. Jews against the occupation, apartheid, and genocide policies of the Israeli government toward the Palestinian people. It's also true that I was India Walton's communications director for her campaign, but in between that campaign and this, I was the communications director for a New York City council member named Tiffany Caban, who I don't know if you know her, but she started her career as a public defender and now is an abolitionist socialist in office and visionary public safety thinker. So in both of these contexts, the content of the media focus has a lot to do with violence. In the case of If Not Now, it's about primarily this genocide in Gaza and also the violence in the West Bank and violence against other neighbors of Israel. And in Tiffany's office, it was about community violence, gun violence, traffic violence, sexual and gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, and of course, police violence. Okay, so that's the background on me and how I come to this. We know that 70 to 80% of readers only read headlines. So this is going to be an examination of some headlines. Okay, there was a story that happened this week. I'll tell you a little bit about the story and then we'll look at the headlines. Probably you heard something about this. For the last year and a half, the Israeli government and military have, to varying extents, been denying food into Gaza, whose ingress and egress it controls in its genocidal campaign. Recently, this intensified. For 2 months, they let in no food at all, leading to this immense famine. After a ton of pressure, Israel, this week, started allowing in the equivalent of 4 rice crackers per day per person. Just the other day, there was this aid distribution event where tons of starving, desperate people showed up, ready to do whatever it took to feed themselves and their families. And the Israeli military shot into the crowd, killing 1 Palestinian. Okay, so can I share my screen? Is that doable?
Yeah, you should be able to there. Bottom of your screen, the
share
button.
Share, and I will. Oh, it's giving me a lot of like exclamation marks and triangles. That's a pity. Okay, I'm not sure that's going to work, so I'm gonna just read you these things and hope that I'm engaging enough that you can get with it all. Okay, CNN characterized it this way: chaos erupts on first day of US-backed aid distribution in Gaza after weeks of hunger. I'll read that again. Chaos erupts on first day of US-backed aid distribution in Gaza after weeks of hunger. Okay, things to notice about this. First thing is the subject of the sentence is chaos. That is who is at fault here. And implicitly, that means that the hero would be order, right? The opposite of chaos. If only we had maintained order, the bad news that we're delivering might not have happened. And the verb is erupt. Chaos erupted, as though it were liquid hot magma spewing forth from the earth under nobody's control. Chaos erupts on first day of US-backed aid distribution. So the US shows up only as an aid distributor or as a backer of aid distribution. And this is in Gaza after weeks of hunger. The hunger is unexplained. Was it a drought? Was it inflation making the price of food too high? We don't really know. And there's no sense that the Israeli government or the US government, who has been financing this genocide, did anything violent. That was CNN's. Here was the AP's. 1 killed, 48 wounded when crowd fired upon at chaotic Gaza aid site, health officials say. I'll try that again. 1 killed, 48 wounded when crowd was fired upon at chaotic Gaza aid site, health officials say. Now, you might miss it because it's at the very end, but actually the subject of the headline is health officials. The headline here is not reporting that a thing happened, it's reporting that health officials said that something happened, which casts doubt on the whole thing in the first place. Otherwise, it's all in the passive voice. 1 killed, 48 wounded, crowd was fired upon by this sort of like phantom actor. And where did it happen? At a chaotic Gaza site, chaotic Gaza aid site. It didn't happen at an Israeli site, even though that's who's controlling the distribution of aid. Lest you think that's just in the US, here's how Sky News from Britain put it. 1 dead and dozen injured after gunfire at aid hub in Gaza. After gunfire at aid hub in Gaza. It's not even construed as a consequence of the gunfire, just simply subsequent to it, conceivably unrelated. And lastly, an English language German site wrote, shots fired as Gaza aid group struggles to distribute. For this example, I'm cribbing from a wonderful academic named Assal Rad, A-S-S-A-L, last name R-A-D. Please do follow Assal on all platforms. You'll get lots of really good analysis of headlines like this. But this is not a new thing. And I was reminded, looking at this post, of an example that I remember from the 2018-2019 March of Return, which was, you'll see in headlines, Gazans. What's not generally discussed is that most of the 2 million plus people of Gaza are not Gazans. They are refugees from other parts of Palestine who were forced there in the 1948 Nakba catastrophe, when the state of Israel was founded by removing a bunch of Palestinians from what is now Israel, and many of them came to Gaza. So they had this giant march for return, demanding to go back to their homes. They showed up in tens of thousands. It was almost entirely nonviolent. At most, 1 Israeli was killed, maybe 0, fewer than a dozen wounded, whereas the IDF killed hundreds of Palestinians and injured almost 10,000. And the Times, in this story that I remembered and looked back at, said on the homepage, it said the image, which I wish I could show you, is of tires burning in the background and black smoke filling the air, and a Palestinian with a slingshot hurling a stone. That's the image of this. And the headline that they put on the homepage is 4 are killed in Gaza protests, including a 15-year-old boy. Killed by whom? Bullet point. Israel's defense minister, the only person quoted here, said that there were fewer people as Palestinians protested for a 4th Friday, but that there was more, quote, terror activity. Perhaps the terror activity being illustrated above with these burning tires and this slingshot being activated. Another bullet point, the total number of fatalities from the protest campaign has risen to at least 38. Fatalities from the protest campaign. That is what they are saying, the protest campaign. Who is responsible for the violence and the fatalities. In the article itself, I won't read the full 4 paragraphs to you, but just know that the second paragraph lists a ton of allegations of violence against Palestinians. Some of them burning tires, hurling rocks, or flying kites with flaming tails in the hope of setting ablaze the fields of Israeli rural communities on the other side. The Israeli military distributed a photograph of 1 kite with a scrawled swastika. And it's not till the 4th paragraph that we hear, but by evening, the Gaza Health Ministry reported 4 killed by Israeli sniper fire. And I should say that the caption under this same picture of the tires burning is a Palestinian protester during clashes with Israeli security forces near the border east of Gaza City on Friday. Clashes. Where's the violence? The violence is all there ascribed to the Palestinians who are being killed for this mass nonviolent action. Just want to say that this is not only true in Israel-Palestine, this is true here when we encounter police violence and officer-involved shootings. I similarly remembered another event that blew my mind, so I looked it back up. And this is a story from a few years ago. In the New York Times, it's being covered. Stray police bullet kills girl as officers fire at suspect in Los Angeles store. Who killed the girl? The stray police bullet. The officers, they were busy firing at a suspect, but the bullet killed the girl. Here's the subheadline. The suspect was killed, and a shot pierced a wall, fatally striking a 14-year-old in a dressing room during the confrontation at a clothing store, the police said. Again, the officers were busy killing the suspect, but the shot is what pierced the wall, fatally striking the girl. That's the New York Times. The AP's headline was Los Angeles police video shows officer shooting that killed 14-year-old girl. Again, it's not the officer who killed the girl. It was the officer shooting that killed the girl. Valentina Orellana Peralta, who was hiding with her mother inside the dressing room, was killed in the shooting. Again, passive voice. Video released Monday showed, this is the lead paragraph. Video released Monday showed Los Angeles police firing at a man suspected of assaulting customers last week at a clothing store. A shooting that also killed a 14-year-old girl hiding in a dressing room who was struck by a bullet that went through a wall. Again, it's the shooting and the bullet that did the violence. The officers were busy killing the suspect. Now, why were they shooting at somebody who was suspected of assaulting customers last week at a clothing store? We don't know. It doesn't matter, because what the police were doing was not violence. Just like when the Israeli military and the U.S. Weapons manufacturing apparatus, they are not capable of violence. For more on the sort of propaganda thing, I would follow Alec Karakatsanis, another great person to follow. You'll be glad you did. Okay, and the closing thought that I'll leave you with is that if editors, chiefs of newsrooms determine that somebody in the story is a good guy and that somebody in the story is a bad guy, nothing the good guy does can be classified as violence. It has to be put in passive voice and questions left. And in fact, in the Gaza case, you have the US only showing up as an aid distributor. And on the other hand, if the bad guy is anything other than perfectly nonviolent at every single second, then that is the story, their violence. So whose violence counts as violence in these headlines? That's the thing I would urge you to remain cognizant of as you read the news. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent presentation, Jesse. That I'm sitting over here muted, talking to myself. People probably watched me just being like mad over here. That is wild. Just the wording can manipulate you so much. When we talk about the passive voice and the specific uses of where's the noun, where's the verb, who did what, who's to blame, I find it hard to believe that journalists are just bad people, right? That doesn't compute with my sense of the world. So is it out of disdain for the victims or out of protection of the offender? Cops in Israel. Is it to protect them or is it to be racist? Like, it seems to be one more than the other.
I think those are actually one and the same goal. I think it's to cast these stories as morality plays between a hero and a villain. And so the hero you have to exonerate, and the best way of exonerating the hero is indicting the villain. Both things do the same work. And I will just note, as you say, like, it's hard to believe journalists are just bad people. I will say that for the most part, journalists don't headline their own stories. And so there are a lot of really good journalists out there calling in quotes, risking their lives in war zones, going around, beating the pavement, trying to verify facts. And then they put their copy in front of an editor, and an editor puts a headline on it. And again, 70 to 80% of people just read the headlines. So the good journalism rarely goes appreciated, and really it's the headlines that count. And editors are much more accountable to CEOs and advertisers and shareholders, et cetera. And so have a vested interest in sort of encouraging the narratives that will please those people, rather than journalists who, as you imply, are often doing really good.
So even if you have this excellent journalist like Sonali, if she's working for a big mainstream outlet, it's going to go to that editor who's thinking about his next raise and how to get that story clicked on more. So
I'll
wow,
say
it can
another
really
thing.
just waste people's skills.
I've known really good journalists who work for the New York Post, which is a Rupert Murdoch-owned right-wing rag, and their job isn't even to write the stories. They go to the site, they interview people, and they call in quotes, and the editor just puts it in the right-wing sort of like propaganda phrasing.
Okay, last question because we're so behind. What's the uniting factor there? How do police, propaganda, and Israel, how do they interact with our media or government to create this effect? Or is it just because it's an easy narrative that makes money?
I would say that the enforcement apparatus, which is police, militaries, borders, surveillance, that all is the security system for capital. And so capital has an interest in valorizing it. And the way capital is able to structure society so as to extract the maximum amount of profit for itself is by creating racist tiers. In society. And so you have Palestinians or you have Black people who serve as this underclass, and the best way to keep them to be an underclass is to consistently portray them as dangerous threats who have to be kept in check. Otherwise, we, Jews or white people or whoever the sort of the group whose fear these media outlets are trying to activate, or will suffer if they're given the sort of freedom that our commitment to human rights would demand that they have.